There's a massive shift happening right now in video content creation, a window of opportunity that so many businesses and creators are totally missing. I mean, I get it. When you think about creating video, especially for your company or your personal brand, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by equipment, cost, and complexity. You might even think you need a big production crew or a studio just to compete. But here's the real deal. The days of overproduced, stiff corporate videos are over. The brands and professionals winning today aren't obsessed with perfection. They're focused on authenticity, real expertise, and creating content at scale that actually builds trust without breaking the budget. Hey, I'm A. Lee Judge, and I've spent over 20 years as a marketing executive, and today I help companies and creators simplify video production, cut through the noise, and empower their experts and executives to show up on camera, no matter where they are in the world. In this video, you'll get an exclusive look inside my previous keynote workshop session at Social Media Marketing World. This session was called Content Creation Made Easy, Equipment to Expert Interviews. We're breaking down what's actually changed in business video content, and more importantly, how you can create high quality and quantity of video without a studio, fancy gear, or overwhelming your subject matter experts. In this workshop, I talked about why authenticity and speed beat overproduction every time. And I'll tell you about the essential and affordable equipment that'll make your videos look sharp. I'll show you how to capture your executives and experts' best ideas on camera, even if they hate being filmed. By the end of this video, you'll have real clarity on what quality means today, plus everything you need to start producing business building content fast. Let's get into it.
Lee Judge, give him a round of applause. Come on up here, Lee. Let's go. Y'all can do better. Give it up, give it up, give it up. Hey, Lee Judge is in the house.
All right. Oh, you know what? Oh, I did bring my clicker. Haha, clicker. Wow, so I was called in case you can't tell, despite our similar stature, I'm not Tamsin Webster. And so I was told, hey, I'm coming in to do a workshop. And I'm picturing like, okay, round tables, maybe 50, 60 people. Turns out the first row is 50, 60 people. So it's gonna be fun. And so we do have a couple of different topics we're gonna talk about today inside of video. And so first of all, let me just let you know who I am. I'm A. Lee Judge. I have an agency called Content Monster. I love creating audio and video. I also spent 20 some years as a marketing executive. So now I'm selling to the same people that I was. And so I'm a lifetime creator, I'm an author, and this is my happy place. I love sitting there. This is important to this presentation because you don't need all of that stuff. That is about 5 different things there. That is a podcast studio. It is a video studio. It is a live broadcast studio, and it's an editing station. That's 5 things. So you don't need all that stuff. So don't be afraid about that. So I want to find out who we're talking to today. Now, I'm guessing there's probably about 2 different groups here. How many of you are here to create content solely for yourself, for your own personal brand? Okay. How many of you work inside a company and you want to create content of the people inside that company? Yes. Okay. Because this presentation is mostly that. Okay, that's my first win for the day. All right, so here's the agenda I have here, and because it is a workshop, we have to have an agreement on what this agenda actually is. So this is what I've laid out for us, but I'm open for questions. I'm open to change things around because at the end of the day, I want you to learn. And so if you have questions that are a little bit outside the agenda and we have time to do so, which I hope we will, I want to answer your questions. As a speaker, I always am amused by when I see the reviews at the end. There's always somebody who says, well, he went too high level. It wasn't detailed enough. At the bottom of the page, somebody else says, it was too much detail. So I know you're here. I'm okay with that. But we're going to make sure we cover these things. So part 1, before we take a break and have some questions along the way, I'm going to talk about what's changed in terms of creating video content, specifically whether you're individual or especially if you're in a business. I'm going to talk about the debate of quality versus quantity. Going to talk about equipment. I'm sure a lot of folks want to hear about equipment and what should I get, what I shouldn't get. Going to talk about the availability of remote production, how to create maybe a kit for your executives, because this isn't just a pandemic thing or a post-pandemic thing. we're all disparate. We're all separated now. Our executives are all over the world. Our teammates are all over the world. They're spread out. How do you create content when everybody's not coming to the office as much? So we're going to definitely address that. And then in part 2, we're going to talk about how to get these people on video. Because our executives, our subject matter experts, the people who have the most knowledge in our companies may not want to be on video. So we're going to help you figure out how to make that happen for them. We're going to talk about the whole process of nailing down those people, convincing them to do video, and then even managing your video shoot when that time comes. Are we okay with that agenda? Okay with that? Okay, great. So here's a few things that have changed in terms of video when it comes to business. Overproduction is a thing, and we know it lacks authenticity. And especially if you're in a regulated industry like medical or anything tied to money or finances, it's hard to not overproduce things. But video is a must-have. That's not an option. It's not even a question anymore. And quality is that debate again. Quantity is a must factor now. You have to have quantity. And so we'll talk about that because with today's technology, quality and quantity are possible. There's no need to debate quality versus quantity because they're both possible. Not to mention that people trust people more nowadays and they do something that's overproduced. And so we want to talk about the definition of quality. What is quality? Is it production quality? Is it the content quality? It's important for us to address those things. So our approach is going to be, how do we simplify production to get this done at a larger scale for our businesses? How do we speed up the production process and create more content and get it out there? And then finally, how to do this without a studio? How to get this done without bringing in crews into our offices, making it nervous for our people who are on camera because there's so much of production going on. And we know this to be true. This by now, it's 2025, you should have gotten this part down to a science. You create one big piece of content, whether it be a testimonial or an interview or podcast with your subject matter expert, and then from there you break it down, whether it be full length for your website, full length for YouTube, and then it breaks down further, social media shorts, and then of course the end game is social, right? It's what we're here for, social media marketing. And so what we're going to talk about today is starting out with that big piece of content. So as you may not hear me mention any particular platforms, what we're talking about is capturing this big piece of video, and then you do the rest of the part down the line to get to this. This video, or these videos, were all done with either a smartphone or a webcam. I show this to show that if you're bringing in large video crews for talking head videos, you're spending too much of your marketing budget. You're probably disrupting the office. You're bringing in a lot of equipment and people that's making your SMEs nervous. I had a case recently where we had a small production and they still brought in 5 people from the marketing team to stand there and watch this person. And we're like, okay, something's going on here. We had a remote producer who's on the phone. We can see them producing it. And we're like, why is this person sweating and looking around? And I said, by the way, who's in that room? Oh, VP of marketing, a marketing director, a social media person. I was like, well, no wonder why. You're creating a big production when the whole design was to minimize the production to get more out of the SME. Again, all these, there was nobody else in the room, if anybody, but the marketing person. They might have been there to push record on the camera. They may have been there to tell a person what's going on, but there was nobody in the room for any of these shots except for the people you see in them. So here's how we got here. Equipment costs were high. Technology has come to a point where we used to thought that TV was the gold standard. This is a picture from probably one of the last video shoots my company did where we did the full-on, we brought in cameras and lights and microphone booms and all this kind of stuff. And it's overwhelming for the subject matter expert. This is probably 2020. We haven't done that since. And the quality we got from this was on par with what we're doing now remotely with an iPhone or a webcam. It is possible. So here's some things we have to recognize. Now, whenever you go to your executives with budget and you say, well, we're going to do this with an iPhone, they're going to go, what? They're going to have all these preconceptions of what that's going to look like, right? So let's talk about these preconceptions, why they're preconceptions, and what we can do to change that. So first of all, small tech doesn't mean low tech. Also, the technology's changed where platforms have arose, especially since COVID, where our software has gotten a lot more intelligent. Now, we had what's called WebRTC, or Web Real-Time Communication. That's basically Zoom, Teams, that's real-time communication. But what's changed since then is a lot of the platforms have gotten smarter in terms of allowing that high-end data, that 4K video, to be stored on a device, and then in the background, uploaded in full resolution to the producer or to you, the marketer, in the background. That's what's changed. And we're going to talk about later on some of these platforms and why maybe Zoom isn't the best, what the differences are. I'll give you some technical background of why this technology change matters and what you should look for when creating video. Also, we got to consider the consumer has changed, what we watch. You know, if you were to tell somebody in 2018 that you'd watch a news broadcast and the most expert person would be in their kitchen, you wouldn't believe it. You're like, how are they an expert? They're broadcasting live from their kitchen. That's normal now. If you were to interview an expert and they're in their home office, in their kitchen, it's nothing we raise a brow at now. It's normal. So the way we consume content is differently. What we expect to see is different. So the consumer part, we trust overproduced content less. Think about, I always have in my mind that, was it Lumi commercial? You know, from your pitch to your parts. Most of those are iPhone videos. And we don't think about, it doesn't bother us. This is a company doing video on iPhones, and even if it wasn't, they made it look that way because we're okay with that, right? So this is something that we talk about, like, why is it that B2B especially is so caught up with being stiff and over-conservative and doing things the old way? It just costs more, it just takes longer, it just doesn't work as well. So hopefully, after this week, you can go back to your executives and say, look, it doesn't have to be done that way anymore. There's a better way, and it costs less. That'll get their attention. And it costs less. So we know that we've had this obsession with authenticity in the past few years. The word hasn't died because we need it, because we believe things more when it comes from people who haven't over-polished things. So what does quality mean? Well, it's not where it's shot. You can shoot it from your kitchen and from your home office. It isn't the camera that's used, because we have a 4K studio in our pocket right now. It isn't that it's consistent branding. Now, that was added because I noticed one of our clients, I went to their LinkedIn page, and I'm scrolling through all their videos, and everyone had the exact same color, the same shade, this logo in the same place. It was obviously a commercial because nothing ever changed in the scroll. If your branding is so dominant that when someone goes to your social page and all they see is branding, 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 they're going to know it's just commercial, commercial, commercial. Okay, so branding, over-consistent, overly scripted content, that should go without saying, is that whenever, even if I don't use notes, for example, I did it one time, and what happened was I tended to want to read what was there. So, yes, we do provide teleprompters, for example. You can do that for your heavily regulated industries, but even then, I'm going to talk about later on also, how to get people away from reading anything. So no matter what we talk about today, keep in mind, scripting is the dirty word. You never want to script video if you can help it. Given there are some regulations in some industries, but even then, our goal is to get away from anything that is scripted because people's expressions change. Your eyebrows don't move as much. That's some weird thing I noticed on myself. I was doing the video, I was like, why does this video look weird? And I watched it compared to one where I was just freestyling. I realized when I was reading, my eyebrows never moved. I would have never thought about that. And I kept going back and forth like, why is this weird? It wasn't that my eyes were moving, it's that my face just wasn't real. The soul wasn't there. I was reading from a script, and I said, okay, I see now. It isn't just a smile. My eyebrows don't move. My head doesn't move a certain way because I'm trying to read something. So script, bad. Okay, this is an example of a company we're working with, and they're creating lots of long-form video with the plan to do short, and this is some of the shorts they're putting out. This isn't a sexy industry. This industry is doing, I think, logistics software, okay? They do shipping, international shipping, logistics software. But what they're doing is they're getting their subject matter experts to talk about things. They're interviewing them, asking them questions. They're not scripted. They're just having this conversation. And throughout the conversation, you end up getting these wonderful answers from an expert that's talking to the person in the room or on camera, and not to, I am making a video. It is just them having a conversation. And in 30, 45 minutes of a conversation, you get some amazing sound bites that were not scripted. Then beyond that, you can throw in your B-roll and your captions and all the things that are format specific for TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn. That also builds into the know, like, and trust. Like, if you see the person who is not framed to be perfect, then you get to know them. You can like them. You can trust them more because this is their expertise talking and not a script. It's not the marketing department talking to you. It is the expert. That's what you want to hear from, the expert, not the marketing department. So also that person, if they are a customer or maybe they're someone who actually helped build your product, then they can talk to the customer. I had a question last week. Someone said, well, what if our person from our development team or our tech team doesn't have the best personality? I said, well, if this person is talking some super deep, nerdy, technical stuff, and you sell something that's super deep, nerdy, technical, I guarantee your customer is what? Super deep, nerdy, technical. And so there's a part of the marketing funnel that you need that content. If there's a person about to buy a piece of $100,000 software, they're going to run it by IT. They're going to run it by the people who need to hear that kind of content. So at some point in your video content, you're going to definitely want to have those kind of people creating content for you. That way it's more sincere and less of a sales pitch. All right. So let's talk about quality a little bit and kind of help us redefine what we consider quality. So traditionally, it's high-end cameras, it's a studio, it's lights, camera action. You got to bring a crew in, and it's expensive and it's time-consuming. In the past, we would bring in a crew. That meant having the conference room for the day, or disrupting an office, or having the C-suite be available. In fact, some of our events, some of our biggest bookings for video production was when they had a big conference, all the executives came to one place, and then we bring a crew in and get a suite and shoot all day long because they were all there. Well, a few things are different now. One, we don't have to go to where they are. They don't have to come to us. If they cancel, we don't have to charge them because our crew was already there. All these things have changed so much. So it's less expensive and less time consuming. The new quality standard is authenticity. Content matters so much more than production value. We're going to talk about production value, but at the end of the day, the most important part is that you're conveying content that your customers want to actually consume. And, shocker, it's achievable with smartphones and even webcams. So your viewers are going to value that timely content. If you're in business especially, I had one client who was so proud because they did this one amazing video per month. I was like, what? Per month? They had their CEO interviewing the CTO with two perfectly set chairs with their logo behind them. I didn't believe it. I didn't even watch it. I didn't believe it. So I was like, okay, your CEO interviewing your CTO about your product? I'm supposed to trust that? Because here's a person who built the thing, sitting beside a person who could fire them for building the thing. They're not going to say anything bad about the product. Why would I trust that? So again, you want to have the right people. We're going to have that part, a lot of that in part 2. And then also, this relatable content will drive engagement with the right people. If you have people who built the thing, talking to people who want to buy the thing, who are technical, you can match those subject matter experts up. If you have your executives talking on video, then the executives of the other company who wants to do business with you can see their peers as well. So think about all the peer levels into the company you're selling into. And then look at your own company and find their peers. Find your technical people, find your marketers, find your C-level suite. Get them in your content because that will resonate with the people on the other end who are buying from you. If you're a marketer struggling to create content that's truly unique to your brand, here's the key. Your experts and executives are your most valuable content assets. Conversational content like videos and podcasts featuring your team stand out above all other content. So, instead of creating content that sounds just like your competition, start leveraging the unique voices inside your company. Thought leaders and authentic conversations build credibility and engagement. At Content Monster, we specialize in remote content production, meaning we coach your people to be comfortable on camera, then we capture and produce high-quality videos and podcasts featuring your team and customers. No need for expensive production crews, long production plans, or complex setups. Want to see how it works? Visit contentmonster.com today to learn more. All right. This is the money shot here. This slide is probably the most valuable slide out of all of these. I probably shouldn't have said that, but it is. Okay, so when you're doing video, this is where we mentioned earlier about why is it that iPhones or phones have a bad rap in terms of quality. It's because of these 5 things. First of all, your camera or your phone is supposed to be there for one job: capture the image. That's all it's there for. If there was a Hollywood movie being shot in here, they would have expensive big cameras. But none of those cameras are recording audio. None of those cameras have lights on them. So why do we ask our phones to do that? So here are your 5 components. Your phone or your camera does images. You have separate lighting. You have separate audio. You have separate stability. And you have separate file management. Take a picture of that one, because that is the one. And coincidentally, if you miss any one of these things, your whole process can break down. And I say that because I've seen cases where people go off and they do this and they forget about the file management. They set up three smartphones, do all this video, and then realize, wait a minute, everybody's gone, and we got part on Jim's phone, part on Susan's phone, okay, they didn't think about file management. Or they think, well, if there's a microphone in the room, then we got the audio, right? But then it ends up being horrible audio or only on one camera. So all 5 of these should be considered. And we're going to go into each one of them and give you some more details. I see someone shaking their head. That's the part where somebody goes, he didn't go deep enough. So we're about to go deep into these 5 things. That's one thing I've saved from the review is we're going to go deeper. Okay, images. Again, the reason why phones get a bad rap for quality is because we expect them to do all the things. We think it's going to do the lighting and the audio and the stability. It's not to do all those things for the quality of video you're trying to achieve, okay? Now, of course, you can hold up a phone and do it if that's what your style is for your brand. But even right now, I'm recording myself on my phone in the back of the room. It's doing the video back there. I've got a mic right here that's doing the audio, and I'll do with the lighting that I have. I'm on stage, so I should be lit. So that's the important thing is I'm not expecting it. I don't have an iPhone sitting right here to record my audio with the light on. It just doesn't make sense. So keep those 5 things in mind. In terms of the images, so let's say you're going to do your video on your phone. Let's talk about some things you want to think about and keep in mind for that. Your phones, and then I'll say this, typically I talk about iPhones a lot. And the reason is because from an iPhone 13 to today, they're all pretty much the same in terms of the menu, how to do things. We do a lot of things remotely, and so if we bring in Android phones, everyone can be different. So no shade to the Android users out there, but iPhones are predictable. We know how they're going to work every time. So your camera on your back of your phone is going to be better in most cases. iPhone, absolutely. You're going to be able to get high resolution, 4K, MP4 format. This is an important one when it comes down to that file management thing I mentioned earlier, because you want to have a compatible format that you can get out of that phone and send to an editor or edit even. Because the phone has other formats, high efficiency and all that kind of stuff. That's great for your family photos, for your family videos. But when you're going to edit that stuff, you need a format you can use. And then also think about storage. Even when we do remote production, there's going to be some cache of storage used in that, so we can do that streaming up of that full 4K file. And if your phone is full of your last vacation you just got off of, you're going to have a problem in the middle of your shoot. There's nothing worse than having your CEO sit in front of you and your phone is full. You really have undermined your credibility of using a phone for your video. Also, charge up. This microphone I'm using right now is plugged into the charging port on my phone. So if my phone wasn't charged, I can't plug it in. So keep these little things that can really throw off a production. One adapter, forgetting to charge up. These are things that I feel like I shouldn't mention, but it's the same things that one little thing can throw you off and you're like, wish I thought about that. So I made sure I added it. And then framing. Now, framing is one of those things where even if you get the other things right, you may wonder, why is this not quite, why does it look less than professional? Well, because a professional has thoughts of how things are looking. You won't find a video, even if it's a high-end camera, you shouldn't find a video of looking up somebody's nose, right? That's so zoom. You think zoom. No matter how quality it looks, it could be perfect lighting, perfect audio, but if it's looking up their nose, all you can think is Zoom meeting, right? That's what it looks like. So my rule of thumb is, if I can see your ceiling or your floor in your video, then your framing is horrible. So you're gonna go back now and probably go, ooh, I see a lot of ceiling in there. Now, used to, I would say, I shouldn't see your light or your ceiling fan. But then I realized people were just like, okay, no light, no ceiling fan, but all the ceiling's up there because the lights, I got a lamp in the corner, so all this ceiling. So unless you have a super wide fish lens, which would also be horrible, you should not have any ceiling or any floor in your videos. If you're doing interviews, the rule of thirds still applies. You may move them to one side or the other where you have someone doing an interview. And I've noticed, this is just, you won't find this probably in any textbook, something I've noticed. I always wondered, how far to the side should somebody turn, even if they're in this position? So my own personal rule of thumb is their other ear should just disappear. See how you don't see their ear in this picture? Maybe a little bit, but just enough to turn away so that little other ear is gone, then the angle should be right. And they're pointing towards a person that they're talking to. And we'll get into the positioning here in lighting. So with lighting, that's probably one of the most important things. So I have panel lights you might have seen earlier in my studio. These are small, I say small, they're 18 by 18. They're not small. They're bigger than your face small, but they're not studio big. Again, your camera does not have the job of creating lighting. So the larger the light, the better. The softer the light, the better. Especially if you're follicle challenged like I am, and you have a reflection on your face or your head or whatever, or if you just have oily skin. You don't want to have a bright light on your desk. There's going to be a hot spot there. I'm not against ring lights, but I don't really care for them either. If you have one, by all means use it. If you don't have one, don't buy one. They're designed for makeup to be right in the center of it, to be close to you. The surface area isn't really that great because it's just a ring, right? It's efficient, but it's not the best. And also the color rating is typically not as good either. So they're not ideal. If you have one, use it. If you don't have one, don't go out and buy one for this purpose. Also, let's talk about the positioning of the lighting. 1, 2, and 3 point. So let me show that to you. So your key light on your bottom right side, that's the first light you're going to need. If you have no other light in the room, that can be your key light. That could be a window, or it could be a light you purchased to put in front of you. That's your main light. If you add a second light, it could be either one of these, the backlight or the fill light, depending on where you're trying to avoid shadows at. I typically say the backlight is my second one. It gives you an outline and separates you from your background a bit. And then the third one would be a fill light. In other words, some video styles, especially, I've played with this myself a bit too, the YouTube style where it's really dark in the room and you see a bright light on this side of my face and that side's kind of dark. If that's your goal, go for it. That's one light with the hair light behind it, if that's your style. But if you don't want this shadow over here or the shadow under your chin, then add a second light to cancel out those shadows, and then also a third to maybe separate you from the background. The positioning of the lights should be slightly above eye level at an angle, especially if you're wearing glasses. That's one thing you're going to really have to think about a lot. If you're wearing glasses, the person you're videoing has glasses on, the first thing you do is try to pick it up higher above their eyes a little bit and angle it down. The angling helps get rid of some of the shadows in their eyes, and the reflection. It's going to take a little bit of moving around, but that's your goal. It's very possible to film someone with glasses with lighting if you move it around. Marketers and sales leaders, if you want to close more deals and drive real revenue growth, you need cash. And I don't mean money. I'm talking about my new book, Cash, The 4 Keys to Better Sales, Smarter Marketing, and a Supercharged Revenue Machine. It gives you a proven framework to improve the 4 areas that impact revenue the most: communication, alignment, systems, and honesty. You need a stronger sales and marketing engine, and this book will show you how to build it. Get your copy now at aleejudge.com/cash. Now, back to the content. Let's get into audio. This one, so I called this video out on LinkedIn, and I almost pissed off the company who I called out because it wasn't about them. It was about their production company. So let me just set it up without actually playing a video here. This was a video of an executive talking with someone else in his company, and it sounded great. It looked great. It sounded great, okay? But can anyone tell me what's wrong with this picture? I heard microphone. What about the microphone? Too far away, I'm hearing in a few places. Okay, too far away. But it sounded great. One of my pet peeves is, and we have clients who always, they run out and buy equipment, say, hey, look what I got. I bought this so we look better on our next video. And it's the wrong thing. And they got it because they watched the video and they bought what they saw. They bought what they thought they heard. This goes for lighting, it goes for audio, especially for audio though. Don't go out and buy things because of what you saw your favorite YouTuber do, because you don't really know what's going on, all right? In this case, someone said, let's shoot a video. And someone says, yeah, let's shoot a podcast. Well, we'll just call it a podcast. Well, if it's a podcast, got to have podcast mics. Okay, let's go out and get podcast mics. Well, this podcast mic has to be the most popular one out there. Let's go buy some Shure SM7Bs. They look great. That's what all the cool podcasters have. They put them on the table. Then they realize, that sounds like crap. Because those mics are designed to be like right here. Like, I usually say a hang 10 from your mouth at most, right? If they use these microphones, it would sound like that room and not like them. So the reality is, they have lavalier mics on. That's why it sounded so good. But if someone was watching this, they would go, okay, I want a video that looks like that and sounds like that. Let's get those microphones. Not realizing that it's deceptive. And that's what I put on LinkedIn, like, this is the most deceptive video you'll see today. And the guy who was in the video, who was like the CEO of the company announcing this new merger, actually jumped on and called me out for it. I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And then somehow I tried to clean it up and say, oh, you guys, great, congratulations on your merger. Great, third quarter results have been great, blah, 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 blah. But it still stood that their production team pulled one over on anybody watching it. I even gave kudos to the production team because it was great production. I just said, look, if you're out there looking to do what they're doing, don't buy what you see. Talk to someone to buy the right thing. All right, enough of that rant. So a little bit behind that rant and where that comes from is that there are many different kinds of microphones. You have lavalier microphones. I'm wearing 2 of them right now. You have your podcast microphone. You have your shotgun microphones. Those are 3 that we see a lot and you might consider. And those 3, the most important thing, as I mentioned earlier, is to know your equipment. Know why you're buying this microphone. They're all great for the purpose they're designed for. You buy the right one, but you buy one you like, or maybe the right price, or maybe you buy too much, but use it for the wrong purpose, and you go, wait a minute, I just spent $500 on this microphone and it sounds like this? Because you're not using it right. When I do video in my studio I showed you earlier, I've got a $50 mic over my head, and it sounds great. But when I'm doing my podcast, I use a $500 mic. It sounds great, but it also looks good, right? But it's there because I want it in the shot, right? So there's differences. I know why the mic is being used, not just what it costs or what it looks like or what I see is popular. It has its purpose. So these are pickup patterns. If you go shopping for a microphone, learn this before you buy. Microphones have pickup patterns. The lavaliers that I'm wearing right now are omnidirectional, which means that they're picking up right around here, all different directions around me, right? And my body's blocking the back, but still, they're kind of all in this area. So I can turn around a little bit. You still hear me. If I did this on a podcast microphone, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because it's designed to only pick up right here. Same thing with the shotgun. Shotgun microphone could be further away, but it's still designed to pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's designed to pick up the point. So know what you're buying before you buy it. Don't buy what you see. These microphones, by the way, again, lavalier podcast microphones designed not to pick up what's behind it. That's why that's the purpose of it. If you're having a podcast and somebody's sitting across from you, you don't want your voice going into their mic or their voice in your mic. So it's designed not to hear what's behind it. Shotgun mic's pretty much the same way, except it can reach further. I could mic somebody in the front row with a shotgun mic, right? I could hear them clearly from where they are. That's what you see in movies. Well, you never see, unless it's a Tyler Perry movie, you never see a mic in the shot. Yeah, he's notorious for having, lavaliers right here on your forehead. Because they have the mics, a shotgun boomed above somebody's head, and there's somebody moving the mic back and forth. Now again, technology is growing and changing. You can hide a mic like this under a jacket or something, but the point is that it's designed for that purpose. So, what to purchase? Well, mics can be cheap and dependable if they're wired. We have a kit we send out, and I'll show you later on, that has a $20 mic in it. $20, because it's wired. It doesn't need a lot of technology. $20. Wireless, you can be cheap or dependable. It's hard to get both. The most popular mic you may see, I'm sure you'll see some this weekend in videos, is a little $20 microphone that's shaped like almost like a little cigarette, basically, a black cigarette, and people hold it sometimes, and it's tiny. $20. I got a couple of them off of Amazon. They work in perfect conditions. Perfect conditions being I don't move too much. That's why people hold them. I tried it one time in a situation like this. Oh my God, the interference, the dropouts. It was just not worth it because $20 sounded like a deal until you put it in a room full of cell phones. Then it stopped working all of a sudden. So you have to know why you have it. So I found out then to upgrade to a microphone. This microphone here, I've had rooms twice as deep as this, not a single dropout. I had to pay a lot more for it, but I've never had any issues with it. So you have to know those things. All right, here's the fun part. Now, this is not a session about AI, but where we are today, there's nothing we can do without it. I mean, AI is like electricity, right? I mean, it's in everything we're doing. And so as a content producer who does lots of audio and video, we have actually been able to change our workflows quite a bit in the past couple of years because we have new AI tools that can do some amazing things to clean up bad audio. So are we ready in the back? Okay, so before you play it, this is before and after. This was audio sent to us by someone who had one microphone in the room with about, from what I hear, I think it was 5 people. So as I always say, just because there's a microphone in the room doesn't mean you're using it. So one mic in the room, I don't know what direction it was pointed, 5 people talking, and we're producing their podcast for them. Now, we usually work with them to do the recording, but in this case, they already did the recording. They wanted to send it to us for cleanup. And had this been 2 years ago, we would have spent, 8, 10, 15 hours engineering trying to get this from a fail to a C+ at best, right? But now with AI, you go from fail to about a B+. All right, so I want you to hear this before you play it. I'm going to play you a before and after. This was cleaned up with AI and a slight bit of space editing. Listen for the phrase, so in fresh water. Okay, remember that. Listen for that phrase. All right, play the before.
It just needs to be enough to negate those surface charges.
So in clear water, or in what's the opposite of salt water?
Fresh.
Okay.
We'll edit that
out. So in fresh water, it's like these particles like their personal space a little bit.
Okay, so what you heard there is lots of folks in the room, a lot of reverb. You could almost tell the room was almost glass. Definitely had some hard floors. You couldn't tell one person from another. All right, now play the after.
It just needs to be enough to negate those surface charges.
So in freshwater, it's like these particles like their personal space a little bit, but you get a little bit of salt in there and they forget they like the personal space, and they end up flocculating more easily and depositing more.
All right.
Yes.
And so presumably if you get into
That was mainly Adobe Podcast. Now, it came out as Adobe Podcast, but now it's also in most of their software. So we use it in Premiere and in Adobe Audition. But this is AI. It's where we're at now. So had we been given that audio 2 years ago, we would have maybe even, I don't know, I wouldn't say scrap the project, but would have set expectations to say, look, you might go from fail to a D. You won't get this good, right? But now given there was some editing, we edited out the extra talk, all that kind of stuff. But even to get to where we could edit out the extra talk, we had to separate those voices so it was clean enough to know who's who. So video is half audio. You saw that on the screen already. So when you're looking at creating good video, you have to please take as much consideration in the audio as you do the video. People will tend to watch content with poor video longer than they watch it with poor audio, right? Everybody's shaking their head. There's no need for a survey on that one. We all know that. If you're scrolling, now here's the thing. Now, we might say, well, sometimes audio is off. That's true. When you turn audio on, if the audio is bad, scroll, you're gone. You're out of there, right? So take in consideration that audio is half of video and that you will not stand to listen to something like the before. If that were a podcast or a video, anything else, you wouldn't watch it. So you don't have to read all this. I'll tell you what happened here. When I came to this conclusion, not only with years of experience of playing with audio, but I found a couple of pieces of research to back this up. And what happened was there were two studies. And one of them was they took some conference talks from a physicist and an engineer. Another one was they did radio interviews on NPR. And what they did was they wanted to compare how do people perceive the quality of those things just based on the quality of the audio. Now, I hope my microphone is nice and loud and clear right now, because what I'm about to show you can tell you how you might perceive me based on how clear my audio is. This was the two professors giving an engineering and physics talk. Every single time, they were perceived as being a better talk, they were smarter, they liked the speaker more, and the research was more important simply because the audio was better. They took this audio, one of them was, they kind of ran it through what was, I guess then, like a Skype kind of a telephone sound. Then the other was enhanced strong audio. And just because the audio was better, they were perceived as smarter. Same thing happened with the NPR interview. The research was thought to be better, more competent, and it was a better interview simply because the audio was better. So apply that to your video and think about how it matters. Okay, this slide was kind of an extra because I found this in my closet. Reminds me of I think I had it with my first Mac and AOL. But again, that made me think, you know what, when I saw this made me think about people actually think. I had a client say, well, there's a microphone in the room. Like, okay, is it even pointed the right direction, let alone being the right microphone? Just having a mic in the room doesn't mean you're actually doing your audio well. Stability should be an assumption, but unfortunately it isn't always that. So let's think about that. So when you're doing business video, there's nothing wrong with having a tripod. We have tabletop versions now. In fact, that's something you need to think about as well. We bought 4 or 5 different tripods, trying to find one small enough, that a small enough footprint for a desk, so our executives would put their phones on a tripod on their desk. We found that as soon as you put it on the floor, it feels like video production. It was too much. They didn't want to do it. They didn't have space behind their desk. It just added friction. So we bought ones that would fit on the desk. Those little things make it possible for you to capture video with your executives especially. It also takes you from quote unquote cell phone video to professional looking video because it's stable. Even webcams, we send out a tripod for a webcam. You may ask, why does a webcam need a tripod? I mentioned earlier about video shooting up your nose. That's why. You put the webcam on a tripod on a desk, you can position it where you need to position it. You can bring it up to eye level. We had a situation, well, a few situations where someone was sitting with a bright window behind them and the webcam was squinting and it changed everything in the look. All we had to do was take the camera on the tripod, put it over here, different view, different shot, everything went great. Had it been on the laptop, it would have been a different conversation. Hey, can you get some books, put your laptop on? Can you move it around here? And can you change the angle? Wouldn't have worked the same. So stability is something we have to consider, and we often think it's not a big deal, but it makes a big difference. Same thing for your lighting. You don't want to be stuck with, oh, well, my ring light's on my desk, I can't move it, right? So you think about that as well. And then, of course, for your microphones. You want to think about, do you want the mic in shot? Do you want the mic over your head? What kind of mic do I have? All that plays into it. These are things that I see people time and time again go out and buy a ton of equipment and forget something as simple as the stands, right? I would like to not have this slide on here, but then that's one thing that people forget to buy.
Hey marketers, imagine harnessing the power of conversations to elevate your brand's authority and visibility. With Content Monster's podcast production services, you create a platform to connect with executives and subject matter experts, fostering relationships that position your brand as a thought leader. Our expert team collaborates with you to craft engaging podcasts, which can be repurposed into videos and social media content, maximizing your reach across platforms. Don't let content creation challenges hold you back. Partner with Content Master to transform your marketing strategy and reach more customers. Visit contentmaster.com today to get started.
File management. Okay, so when we were doing shoots with big production, we had multiple mirrorless cameras, and we still do that from time to time. You got to have a plan. Where are all these files going to be? Who's going to get them off the camera? Who's going to put them into a hard drive? If we're doing remote production, say it's OpenReel or Riverside or StreamYard, where are the files going to be uploaded to? They're going to bring a backup down. All that has to be considered. So if you're recording on your phones, make sure the device has sufficient space. Make sure you have your settings set in that phone before your production to make sure that you have the most compatible file. This is actually the iPhone path to get to your, they call it most compatible. What it's basically doing is saving it as an MP4. If you have it as high efficiency, you can't really export that and pull it into your editing software because it's high efficiency. It's not designed for that. Use cloud storage, whether it's on your phone or on the platform you're using. And even if you're using a platform that's online, like a StreamYard or a Riverside, still pull a copy off. Now, it rarely happens that there's an issue with that, with many platforms, but we have had cases where we had a deadline to hit, they're down for an update, we can't get to our files, right? So look out for yourself in that manner. All right. I mentioned remote production. So we do a lot of remote production. Like I said, we don't do as much in person anymore. Our favorite is Riverside. We use OpenReel for the really heavy video stuff. I should explain the difference though. We use OpenReel because it is video first, whereas Riverside was audio first. And I still like Riverside the best, but there's missing some video features that OpenReel has. Okay, so those are just two. We'll talk about platforms in a moment as well. And because of that, you have to have a good internet connection. Should be a part of your pre-flight plan of before you go. Do we have internet connection? And are we ready to back up? All right, here's an important one. When it comes to all the software we use, we have Zoom, we have OpenReel, we have Riverside. They're not clear on what platforms are best. And quite honestly, their marketing teams do a great job at telling us that they all do everything. But they don't all do everything. They do the thing they do, their core competency tends to be where they came from. In other words, think about when you want to buy a platform for recording video, think about what was the first thing that company sold, and if there's an error, where would their dev team go to work on as a priority, right? So for example, your conference platforms. Lee, why not record our podcast on Zoom? Our CEO is used to Zoom, let's just use Zoom. Well, it is a conference platform. Its priority is to keep you connected by all means necessary. They've added in features. Again, they all say they do all the things, right?
but the quality is not going to be there, because if there's a problem, if it's time for an upgrade, their engineers are going to work on the part that keeps you online and connected, not the part that says, well, let's get them from 1080p to 4K. That isn't their priority. Their priority is keeping you connected. So Zoom, Teams, WebEx, Google Meets, whatever your flavor is, keep in mind that is a conference platform first. Streaming platforms, again, they are all trying to do all the things. Nothing against any of them. I've used all of them. StreamYard's great. Restream's great. If you don't mind loading software, then you have OBS and Wirecast. I use Ecamm myself for recording video locally. They all require, well, the last three, OBS, Webcam, Ecamm, require you to load software on your computer. I like that better because the file's already downloaded, but it requires more fiddliness. You have to be willing to deal with software or willing to purchase a license or multiples if you're in your company. But again, their primary focus is making sure you can stream to multiple places, right? So if it comes down to dev time, they're going to make sure they're going to add more platforms for you to stream to. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, our priority is making sure you can stream everywhere. This is what our marketing says we do. That's where we started from. But keep in mind, they may not be the best at conference calls. They may not be the best at recording. This is the final build. You can take a picture now. These are recording platforms who started in the world of recording. I mentioned we use OpenReel and Riverside. OpenReel because they have the best features for us from what we do for recording video. Now, this is typically for one-sided, not conversations. So when someone says, Lee, we need you guys to record our C-suite executives, one's in London, one's in New Jersey, and one's in California, we want to ask them questions or ask our customers questions. We're going to use OpenReel because it has the most features. We can control their cameras, their phone or their webcam, to get the highest video quality. Now, when it comes time for a conversation, not so much. We might go to Riverside because they came from the audio world. They're less likely to have feedback. They have higher efficiency on capturing conversations because that's where they came from, right? So when it comes time to upgrade, they're going to upgrade that portion. So those are the ones that we utilize the most. Nothing against Squadcast, Zencast, or Social Live. They're all great. We use Riverside mostly and OpenReel. The difference between those also is, as they're trying to add in all these features, they're also adding in some editing features. Riverside's doing an awesome job at adding in a lot of editing features. Again, no matter how much you love them, know what they came from, right? So that's why there's some platforms that are great at editing, but not the best at streaming or recording or conference calling. And at some point, you're going to have to take some of that stuff offline. So I've challenged some of my producers to produce my podcast strictly on Riverside. Do everything you can to not bring it off Riverside. Our goal is to find out how far we can push the limits of that platform and still reach the level of production that I'm used to. What that means is, well, Lee, that transition you like, we can't do that. Or that extra thing you wanted to fly in or fly out or whatever, you can't do that because it's not in the online platform. We keep an eye on where's the bar where we have to bring it offline and bring it onto something like Premiere to do offline editing or even CapCut. There's some things you have to know where that line is, right? You may have an in-house production team who would rather have it in CapCut or Premiere. Send it on to them. Don't make a promise you can do everything in anybody's software because their software will change. The transition you love will go away or will change. So understand you're at their mercy if that's the case.
Have you ever thought about doing a podcast for your business? And if you have, you probably have some questions, and we understand that because podcasting isn't for every business. That's why we've created a tool called podcastornot.com. If you go to podcastornot.com, you can take a quiz that gives you a full assessment of the strengths and weaknesses you may have in terms of if you're ready to start a podcast and how it can benefit your business. Now, we know podcasts are a great marketing tool and a great source of content for all businesses, but maybe you're not there yet. So take this assessment at podcastornot.com. We'll give you a full report that you can share with your team about are you ready and is a podcast a fit for your business. So go to podcastornot.com, take the quick quiz and get a full assessment of should you start a podcast for your business. Back to the content.
All right, so one of the feedback I got from a presentation a few months back was, so Lee, what do we buy? What do you send out? And because I'm very sensitive about not selling from stage, I never included it in my presentations because we actually send these out to our clients. Okay, so I've been asked that so many times. I'm going to show you 2 of the kits that we send out to our clients. Now, the thing is, our goal is not to have the most sophisticated equipment, it's to have the most usable equipment for the executive. And that's why we went through 4 or 5 tripods, several cameras, several microphones, because some of them might have sounded better, but required software. Or the tripod might have been sturdier, but the footprint was too big on the desk. Or the microphone might have been, maybe they could withstand yelling, which we didn't need because they're an executive in front of their desk, but it was wired. So the goal was to make it as plug and play as possible. So let me show you one of the kits. There's no audio here, so I'll just talk through this. This particular kit is designed, we send these out to executives. So for example, we did a financial advisor company. We did 200 videos in about 2 months. 200 videos. And what that required was us to have something we could send to the executive that wasn't intimidating, that they could set up with nobody technical in the room, plug and play, which meant that we also had to decide, we like this webcam better, but it requires that software to look good, right? You look at YouTube, this gamer says this is the best video webcam to buy because of the frame rate. I can move around and whatever, but these aren't gamers, these are executives, right? Plug and play was the secret here. So it also had to fit in their backpack because people are always on the move. So this kit came with a couple of stands. These stands had a small footprint, one for the webcam, one for the light. We like the Logitech C920. We're about to upgrade to another camera, but the reason why that camera was one we use, it's old school, but it just plugs and works. It has software. I use the software, but it needs to look good enough without having to give our executive software to load on their computer, which probably is not going to happen. Some of the first videos you saw when I first started was with the Logitech camera. It just also took a producer to know, okay, let's get you from in front of that bright window that's making the webcam squint. If there's a bright window behind you with that webcam, it'll look like witness protection. You'll be a silhouette. So it has its limitations. Again, know what you're buying, right? So that works great if you know what to do with it. Another set we have is one that we call a remote studio. This was developed, honestly, when people had more office space. They weren't in the office yet. This is just post-COVID. We're trying to figure out, okay, we need to be able to have people to be able to stand up and do video. We had a big project with, we're doing a learning management system with a tech company. They wanted to stand up and talk about their software and then demonstrate with the video over their shoulder and stuff. So we said, okay, this kit has to be something you can stand up with, has to have a bit more lighting, and it can't be but so big. So this one was we did use the iPhone and we used OpenReel because that way the producer could be on the camera talking to the executive and helping them through the process, right? They weren't by themselves. Typically there's a marketer there who helps set this up. So here's a video, I'll show you the walkthrough. I didn't know how bald I was until this video. I'm okay with that. I'm getting, my wife says give it up, but I'm okay with it. So a stand for the microphone, for the camera. Everything has its stand. This is where it's important. You have to think about your stands. The lights, I love these lights I have in my studio as well. The point is they all fit in this shoulder bag. We had one marketer, she was in the, I guess, New England area, and she took the train to 3 different executives. They were an investment advisory firm. I think they had a lot of investors, and they wanted to get those people on video for a big shareholders meeting. And they went from office to office with this shoulder bag, set up this shot. In fact, the first videos you saw were with a kit like this. They were filmed on an iPhone. The difference was they had plenty of lighting to make them look good. iPhones don't look good without good lighting, right? They can if you're on the beach in a perfect sunset, just perfect, what they call it, a magic hour, they can. But typically in an office with the blue light over their heads, you're going to have shadows. It's not going to look good. So this way you can control the lighting. The microphone was a $20 wired microphone that went from their lavalier across the floor up to the camera. That way, we had no worries about the interference in that office. We don't know where these kits are going. They could be going next to a building next to the fire department, and there's all kind of radio frequencies going on. We don't know, right? So if we wire it, we reduce the chance of there being problems. And in this situation, it's a pretty high tense situation because you have your executives who creating content is not their most important thing to do, right? They're thinking about mergers and acquisitions. They're not thinking about creating content for marketers, right? So you want to make sure everything you can do to make sure it's simple is taken care of. Okay, so here's some recommendations. Given they change constantly. I mean, before I do this presentation again, I'll probably have a different webcam even. So they change constantly. So the C920 is a great webcam. We're looking at upgrading to the OBSBot camera. Again, our priority is not to be the most amazing webcam, it's to be the most plug and play that still looks really good, right? And then there's, of course, your iPhone. Lighting, there's a few brands that we like that are not budget breakers, but do create good quality stuff. Neewer, GVM, Releno, we have those brands we send out a lot. That CRI, that lighting rating is something you want to look at. If you're in that place where you already have that ring light, and I say don't buy another light because you already have one, still look to see what is CRI rating. The quality of that light matters. You want something that's softer without a hot spot. The bigger you get, the softer it'll be. We can also add some diffusion to it. These lights have a diffusion panel in it. Diffusion means that it softens the light and spreads it out. And then audio-wise, I'm actually wearing the Hollyland right now. My phone is in the back of the room. I'm wearing the Hollyland lavalier right here. So far, I haven't been in a conference room so deep that it doesn't sound really good. Okay, so that's the Hollyland. Up until the past year or so, we always did wired because there would be interference with some of the Bluetooth and some of the wireless mics. But we're getting to a place now where we just actually sort of client, they're a travel company and they do destination weddings. And so the challenge was to produce their video podcast anywhere. They might be out by the pool. They could be, on the beach somewhere. So we switched to using these kind of mics for their podcast. And it's working great. Now, a year or two ago, we probably would not have tried that because technology's gotten to where between Hollyland and DJI and Rode, their mics are getting pretty good where we trust that we can do that.
All right, that was part one of this two-part presentation. We had a Q&A in between, so right now, if you have any questions, drop your questions below in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. And then you can go on to watch this video where we get into how to get your subject matter experts to do video for your marketing campaigns, how to get your SMEs, your executives convinced to do video. Watch this video right here and I'll see you there.